I am Jenny Reese Clark, and I am also Jenny Schumacher. Jenny Reese Clark is my, right. Jenny Reese Clark is my pen name, my author name. If you look up Jennifer Clark, that will be my AIS, State of Alabama Department of Corrections name. However, I have gotten remarried, and now I'm a Schumacher. I call my testimony against the grain. My father was a cabinet builder, used wood often. And if any of you have used wood or worked with wood, you know that you do not sand against the grain. If you sand against the grain, it's not that the wood is going to lose its ability to be wood and hold things. It's that when you go to finish it and put a stain on it, you'll be able to see every scratch in it. And so if you sand against the grain, it leaves a lot of scarring inside the wood and imperfections. But that's what my life looks like. A lot of scars and a lot of imperfections. However, there is a finished product. Let's get started. I was born in Northridge, California, in Los Angeles County. This is during the 80s, as you can tell. This is my mullet or something, whatever that is. That's my Farrah Fawcett at 3, I guess. I don't know. My dad and my mom, my 2 brothers and me is who it was. My father was military in the beginning of life. Met my mom at Maxwell Air Force Base when he was stationed there. He was born in California, so brought us all there. All the kids were born there, but he did not want us being raised in Hollywood, so he brought us back down south. Slide. And which is where I met my sister at church, because I was raised in a church. My very first church was John MacArthur's church. If you're familiar with John MacArthur, that was the very first church, the very first pastor I sat under. And I was raised in a wonderful home where my parents did take me to church. They coached me in ball. They did everything. And during that time period, very early on, when I first got to Montgomery, Alabama, I met my sister, whose mother was also military, who was running around. She's a full-blown colonel, so she is definitely moving around a lot. And in the course of that time, Evelyn kind of got with a bad crew, started getting in trouble. Her mom wanted to send her to military school. That just really wasn't what God wanted. God wanted her to have a family, and since she knew ours, guess who became my new sister? Evelyn. But like I was saying, I grew up with an active childhood. I was in gymnastics, I was in water skiing. We shared every experience. This is my Sweet 16. My 2 brothers and my sister can be found in this party picture right here, because we did everything together. We supported each other with everything. We were only 1 year apart. So the ages were 33, 34, 35, and 36 is what they are now. So needless to say, we all dated each other's friends. It was great. 2 boys, 2 girls, perfect match, right? Okay, basketball, cheerleading, life was great. Everything that we did was a team effort. I mean, we joined the water ski team, which is this team right here. And the person in the red, that's my father. My brother is behind him spotting. I'm the second in the pyramid right there. And I want you to note that his pain, your gain shirt, very, very intentional part of my testimony that I never know until about 15, 20 years later. Fast forward. Everything was peachy until there was a life-changing car accident in March 7th, 1999. I was ejected from a car through a car door, going 76 miles an hour. I broke my pelvis in half, fractured it in 5 places, broke L5 vertebrae in my back and my tailbone in half. I had lost 5 pints of blood through my femoral artery in my thigh and was transported to UAB in Birmingham, where they put in 2 5-inch long plates, 4 3-inch long screws. Fast forward, put in an external fixator, which you'll see right here if you're familiar with a halo that goes on people's heads. That is what I had. I was very fortunate that I got put at UAB. I got transferred to UAB because George Alonzo was a ranked top 3 in the world in pelvic trauma, and I just so happened to get him because the good Lord wanted me to. And I healed abnormally fast, actually. This is 2.5 months later. This is 6 months later, so you can see some of these standing against the grain here, scars on my leg. 6 months, so those are not scabs, those are scars. And I have over 5-inch long scars on my body now. Fast forward. But what happened as a result of that, even though there's smiles in these pictures, is that when I began to go and pursue the regular things of my life, because at that time I was 17 years old, and I wanted to be what every 17-year-old wanted to be. I wanted to be a pro show skier. Just like so-and-so wants to be a pro football star and a pro softball field, that's what I wanted to be. And so when I went to go back doing these normal things that I was doing and used to doing and accustomed to doing, my body could no longer do what my brain could still do. And inside of me, instead of turning to the Lord and asking Him for guidance and direction, a rebellion came up and indwelled inside of me, because these were my dreams and these were my hopes, and I had not even thought of life another way, because I lived in a perfect dream world with 2 parents. I was given values. There wasn't any cussing, drinking, smoking, but we all had a blast. I had pretty much everything I needed. I had an education, doing great. Life, I can't be a show skier. And it just devastated my soul. And so rebellion began to form inside of my soul. And so instead of doing what I said and turning to God, I said, well, you know what? That's fine. If I can't be a show skier, I'm going to get the next thing on my list. And that's going to be, I'm going to have a family. I'm going to have a husband. I'm going to have kids. And I'm going to do the white picket fence thing. And that's how my life is going to look, because that was the next thing on my list. Because that's what I wanted to do. And so I did. The gentleman's house, I was on the way over when I actually had the car accident. I ended up, he became the suitor. And I said, well, he loves and takes care of me. So, I'm going to love him back, and we're going to have a family. And so I did. While it looks beautiful here, there were severe consequences for having children on a broken frame like mine. The first one, after I gave birth to my first child, 3 months later, I still felt 9 months pregnant, and I knew there was a serious problem. Went to the doctor. They said, well, you've got severe degenerative osteoarthritis, and since we can't, give you a brand new back, here's some pills, and this will help, take care of the pain. And there's really nothing else we can do for you right now. And so nothing over the counter was working, nothing else was working. I just, I didn't really know what addiction was, because I just wasn't raised that way. I didn't see that personally. I knew it was out there, but that never happens to you, right? I should have learned that lesson the first time when that car accident was nearly fatal. I hit one car, had 8 people in it. I should have learned that lesson then, but I didn't. Began to take these pills. 6 months later, unplanned, comes my second child. And with this delivery, it actually fractured my pars and articulatus in L5 again in my back. And there you go, here's some more pain pills. And so I began to, instead of using, again, the Lord to be my strength, I began to use these narcotic analgesics as my strength. And because my responsibilities were not decreasing but increasing, I needed increasing amount of pain pills by my bed table when I rolled over and woke up in the morning. So here I am, long story short, addicted, divorced, devastated. Anytime you incorporate, and I don't think I have to tell you this with seeing everybody here this morning, that anytime you incorporate sin into your life and unbridle it and let it go, it is going to affect everybody around you. I lost everything that was ever important to me in my life. My pride was huge. I thought I was untouchable, and the Lord showed me I was touchable, but I still didn't think I needed Him as much as I truly needed Him. And then here I am now with this new injury, new dependency. I'm losing everything. At first He cut my ankles off. He says, you're going to serve me. And I was like, well, I'm busy. And then He says, okay, well, that's fine. I'll cut your legs off. And so now I'm sitting there. I don't have anything. Fast forward. And it didn't take long for me to get my first felony offenses in 2008. Because when you're wandering around in the city with no family and nobody to really be accountable to, what the heck? I guarantee you a drug dealer's going to hang out with you, especially if you have money in your pocket. So it wasn't long before I got a possession of cocaine, a possession of ecstasy, and a concealed weapons charge in 2008. So I went in front of the judge, and the judge says, okay, well, you've never been in trouble before. You don't come from this kind of lifestyle. Maybe it's a fluke. 2 years DOC, 1 year probation, suspended. That's what we're going to give you. And we're going to give you some outpatient rehab classes, and let's hope that everything works out for you. It didn't. 6 months later, I failed a dirty urine, and they sentenced me to Life Tech Transitional Center, which was the state's #1 best way to treat addicts. They offer every style of counseling method, every philosophy the world has to offer. Every religion and every denomination will come in the evenings, and they would offer you all this stuff. Play the tape forward, positive self-talk, recognition of your triggers, coping skills, mechanisms, blah, 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 blah. You'd hear it all. I had every tool in my toolbox to stay sober for the rest of my life and yours when I left that place. And I was eager. I was going to rock sobriety when I left that place. Like, these people are, I'm not like that. So my sister was one of those people, you know, when you begin to incorporate drug use into your life, you burn bridges really quick because it's a very selfish sin. And so you're focused on you, and you really don't care who you plow over to make sure that yourself is satisfied. But my sister, it was her turn to take up that kind of rope, that slack, that whatever, that everybody was kind of passing me around. Oh, it's your turn to deal with her. I'm not dealing with her today. And so she did. She was very faithful to me. She loved me. She cared about me. She brought me into her home, and she truly felt that if she would just offer me a perfect environment, a loving place, warm touch, food, fellowship, that was going to keep me sober. And I was gung-ho. I had every tool. I'm good. You know, I got that and that. I am untouchable. So I get to her house. First week I'm there. I buy a car because you can't do anything with that car. Or so in my world. And number two, I enrolled in the second week, I enrolled at AUM. I'm going to go back to school. I'm going to be somebody. The third week, I started AA because that's what? Proper protocol, right? That's what you got to do. Fourth week, you find peer support because that's the next step, right? You can't do it by yourself. You got to have somebody else. Everybody got to get them together, and that's what's going to help you. And so the fifth week, we went to AA, and no one showed up, but me and my peer support. Well, we look good. We need to go show those people around the corner how good we look because we've been sober almost like 8 months. So that's what we did. And I will say, I'm happy to say that I didn't use that time, but we circled the block and went right back around and got a sack. It was exactly what we did. April 16th, 2010, tragedy strikes. Because, you know, I fast forward, but I don't think I really feel like I need to tell this audience what happens, you know, I get that feeling that, I think you guys know that you pick up a lot of bad habits along the way. My sister was at work. She was a teacher. And I had been high for about a week, been up about a solid week, about 7 days. And I wasn't thinking clearly. And I decided that her place was a good place because she was so good that no one would ever suspect that I would be manufacturing methamphetamines in her house. So it blew up. It blew up. My sister, who loved me and cared for me when no one else would, who brought me into her home, who gave me that chance, just wanted to love me and wanted me to get better because we were best friends, you know. My family looked after her when her family was ready to go do something else with not her. So she was doing that for me when my family just kind of was like, ugh. She was doing that, and this is what I did to her. Next step. 24 hours later, I don't have to tell you, I didn't stick around. I blew the house up. I was inside the house when it blew up. It was so hot inside that home that by the time I made it to the door, my shoes had melted to the floor because it was a chemical fire, so I had to kick them off, so I was shoeless. My keys were still inside of the home, and so you had to know that I was under the influence because I turned around to go back and get my keys. Like, who goes into a burning building after it's already, like, it's on fire? You go back into that. Doesn't make any sense. But that just shows you how under the influence I was and how my thinking was so skewed. And I thought, you know, I'm legitimately trying to help myself. Well, the backdraft effect, my hair blew forward. I took off, and that's all she wrote. They didn't see me. They had no idea what happened to me. I didn't stick around to find out what they were going to think. I had to go. 24 hours later, I was admitted to Jackson Hospital in Montgomery, Alabama as a Jane Doe in ICU for an accidental overdose on a drug called GHB, gamma hydroxybutyrate. Jump Street is real nice to come jump out from wherever they are to get you wherever you are. And when I was finally woke up from the coma that I was in, they were there when I was being wheeled out in my paper scrubs. And they picked me and they put me in their black SUV, and I went in my paper scrubs, and I was arrested for first-degree manufacturing charges and arson 3 charges. If you know anything about the penal system, Class A felonies carry a minimum of 15 years to 99 or life in prison. So there was no choice, but I was going to, the minimum I would get would be a 15-year sentence. And 15 years I was given. Next picture. So I went to the Alabama Department of Corrections, and I had been incarcerated for about 10 months by the time I finally got there. You know, they tell you you're going somewhere, and you go there about a year later, and that's about normal, so don't expect more if you ever get in trouble. But I was sitting there, and I get to prison, and I've had 11 months to really think about all the things that I had done in life and whose life I had impacted and in what way and how it really hurt people. And I thought I had a true understanding of the pain that I had inflicted upon others. I really did. I thought, I'd prayed. I had, talked to other people. No one was talking to me at the time. Who would want to, right? No one would talk to me at the time. My parents came and saw me, I think, out of pity. After a while, they kind of were like, well, I don't think she can change, and we're just, we have the same blood, so I guess we should probably, just kind of. But you could tell when you look at somebody, they don't believe you, they don't trust you. You know that, and I could see that in my parents' eyes, and that was one of the most shaming things that I've ever experienced in my life. But I get this letter, and I'm in prison, and if you do not know anything about prison, if you're incarcerated and it's mail call, you will see 300 people perk up in 2 seconds flat. Because we want to know that somebody out there has thought about us and that we're not dead. And if they've written a letter, that means their number one is life outside of those prison walls, and two, that you are not forgotten, that you're not dead, that they just don't care about you. And I saw from a long distance away this light brown envelope right here, and that's our family business. Grace Fabrication has been for almost 30 years, custom cabinet shop. And I'm like, ooh, that one's for me. So I make my way back from where I was in the jungle in F-Dorm in Julia Tutwiler Prison, and I knew that letter was for me. And I was so excited because somebody had not forgotten me. Like I said, it had been 9 months, 10 months. I'd already lost no letters from my kids, no letters from aunts, uncles, grandparents, sisters, brothers. I mean, who would want to talk to me after I had done that to our family? And I get this letter, they call my name, I knew it's for me, and I was so excited to read this. I don't know if I related to you or if you were able to totally understand or comprehend what happened that day in the hospital when you were brought back from death. I know we will never understand the Lord, His plans or directions, but if we step back and look at the outcome, we may just get a small glimpse of His hand at work. Mom and I were standing over you, being told by the doctor of your condition. They had finally stabilized you. You would live. My mind was numb from the number of shocks that had been fed over the past few days. As the doctor spoke, my mind changed gears from accepting your death to a huge dose of reality. I looked at Mom, she at me. She released a deep breath, then tears of joy. Then she stopped. She too realizing your future. Bill Bergeron came over and stood with us. He has a son that also fought drugs for years. He looked at you as if you were his. His heart was breaking. The three of us longing for you to see your life, your purpose, your value, and what you were throwing away. No words were being said, but a fullness of understanding flooded the room when Mom's cell phone went off. Life's presence was rudely interrupted. She answered and walked away so she could talk. Bill and I just stood staring at you. He was in deep thought. His own son could be in your place. I could see that it had a grip on him. My thoughts went from thankfulness to anger, along with a million questions. You had ripped your sister's life apart, the sister that was caring for you, that reached out when all others wouldn't. I was at a loss of what I felt. Bill and I were in our own world of thoughts when Mom interrupted. Stuart Bieber is dead. He died about an hour ago. Her face said it all. Tears streamed nonstop down her cheeks. Her legs didn't want to stand. I grabbed her and we cried in each other's arms. I could not understand how. Why, Lord, what are you doing? Mom just wept in my arms, looking at your limp body, knowing you wanted to kill it and Stuart wanted to live but was dead. It was almost too much to process. It hit me so hard I didn't want to believe it. I refused to believe it. I refused to let anything else in my mind, but there it was. Last week they had the 1-year anniversary of Stuart's death. They all gathered at the lake. Many of the team got tattoos of a barefooting angel. Jenny, your life is so important. God took Stuart and left you. He was done with Stuart, but you have a life, a wonderful, special life. Use it, baby girl. Don't let drugs steal it from you. Stuart's life was lived in the hands of the Lord. He lived it walking with God. Jenny, pick up where Stuart left off. Make your life reflect the Lord. Jenny, last month, Mom and I attended the funeral of Bill Bergeron's son. He killed himself. Jenny, do you see? Jenny, do you hear? Jenny, you can do this. I love you. Now, that is not what I was expecting to read with my first letter in prison after I'd already been gone 10 months. You would think that the dust had began to settle and everything was kind of calmed down and that I had come to a place of understanding. I read that and it penetrated my soul. I began to understand that my actions had ramifications far greater than what I could even consider. And I hit my knees in my soul. I went back on my bunk and I read that over and over and over and over and over again so that I would never forget. And I share my testimony to whoever asked me, whenever they asked me. And that letter is one that I share no matter where I am. Because I never want to forget that my actions have consequences that the weight of them, you have no idea when you're in the midst of your sin how great your choices can affect people. But they affect them greatly. This is Jason Bergeron. He went to Afghanistan, came back, saw some horrific things, got PTS, didn't know how to cope, got hooked on drugs. They sent him to a rehab center, diagnosed him with PTS, enrolled him in a clinic in upstate New York. He overdosed and died before he made it there. Next story. This verse right here became my life verse when I was in prison. Your words were found and I ate them, and your words became to me a joy and the delight of my heart, for I am called by your name, O Lord God of hosts. I began to study the Bible and devour the Word of God as if it was my lifeline for everything. Fast forward. I began to study Proverbs. Proverbs was, if you're not in understanding, Proverbs is one of the greatest books that you can ever study, especially if you're in transition in your life, because when we happen to go through the life experiences that I had, even though I was raised with great morals, you cross lines and boundaries that you said you'd never cross, and then you begin to see things, and then that's not as bad anymore. And oh, well, I've seen worse, so that's really not that bad to do that. And so basically I had to just kind of, what does that verse say? No longer conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. I had to renew my mind, and how I did that was feed myself Scripture. And, the Bible is always talking about Jesus, and Jesus was nothing but a servant. And I looked around, and I needed to serve people, but I couldn't go to a soup kitchen, and I couldn't do this, and I couldn't tell them, hey, load me up, I need to go outside and do something. And so I had to be creative in the limited opportunity that I had there. And I began to pluck eyebrows, and nothing's for free in prison, but I did it for free. And the Lord honored that. He honored my choice, even though it didn't look like what we're accustomed to. I love what he said about all this. It's not what I'm accustomed to. But when you step outside of the box of normal, God uses your willingness to put yourself down and humble yourself from the things that hinder you from moving forward with an open heart and an open mind to serve Him. As I began to serve Him, and I began to hear stories that were worse than mine, stories that weren't as bad as mine. And I realized that it wasn't a story because everybody had one. Everybody had somebody's mama die, and everybody had so-and-so who was addicted, and everybody lost a kid, and everybody did this, and everybody did that. And I realized that the story is not the significant part of this picture here. It's what you do with your story that impacts people's lives. And I began to say, you know what, I'm going to take my story and I'm going to share it because none of the state-sanctioned facilities, they didn't show up. Do you think you'd come here and no one show up? Somebody's going to be here at church. Using the church as your accountability partner is one of the greatest things in the world. AA usually has anywhere from 5, 10 people to 40 people on a good day in a session. And, there's probably 150 people in here right now. You're more likely to run into these 150 people than you are those 40, especially if they're in the midst of their drug use. So I began to do creative service work. God opened my eyes to learn about people and learn how to interact with them and talk with them and learn what's in significance. My sister, Ben, 12:30, okay, 10 minutes. So what happened was the neatest thing in the world. While I was sitting there, no one spoke to me for 2.5 years. No letters from kids, no letters from aunts and uncles. Like I said, my mom and dad did come and began to see this transformation take place in my life, and which they felt was truly authentic. But what was so neat is that I kept trusting in these scriptures that, all things work together for good for those who love Him and are called according to His purpose. And I was like, I got to cling to that, And then mail call would come again, and I still didn't have a letter, but I'd still cling to that. Well, guess what the Lord was doing? The Lord was working on my sister's heart to forgive me and the family members to forgive me. So I get a program to be able to get out of prison early, right? And I'm super excited. And right before I come home, my sister and her husband want to meet with me. And do you know, they set me down at a conference table, and I feel like I'm in front of the judge again because I'm fixing to be rendered a verdict. Is she going to forgive me, or is she not going to forgive me? This is going to change my life. What she says in this moment, just like when a judge hands down a sentence, it's going to change your life. And do you know that woman, click on it, proceeded to read this letter. Her husband proceeded to read this letter. And do you know that she sat me down and she said, Jeannie, I not only want to forgive you for the offense that you have caused against me and my family, removing our home and our safety and betraying me and all that, but I want to thank you because Jesus Christ has come in to me and my husband's life so strongly that our relationship is impenetrable now, because through the midst of that fire, we learned how to lean on God for understanding and hope and everything that we needed in life. And we learned what it was to be content. We learned what it was to be content with little, and we learned what it was to be content. So now, I don't want to just forgive you, but I want to thank you. Because without you, we would have never experienced this opportunity. Yeah, I'm falling out. Because oh my gosh, I had imagined a million times what perfect forgiveness would look like. And it was my sister coming saying, I love you, here you go. But her to sit there and turn around and thank me, the Lord was fighting. That verse in Isaiah says He fights for you. He does. He was fighting for me the whole time I was fighting and thinking I was alone. He was working for me. So Ben turns around during this letter whole process. He pulls out this coin, which is this Ephesians 6 coin, which is your guys' homework. Ephesians 6:10 through 18. If you don't know it, you need to know it by heart and be able to recite it, because that's exactly how you will combat anything that presents itself that's a challenge. If you have got your feet planted firmly in the gospel of peace, and you've got the breastplate of righteousness, the helmet of salvation, the sword of the Spirit, buckle of truth. When evil comes and presents itself to you, you will know how to fight, and you will know how to maneuver, and you'll have the equipment in order to overcome that temptation that presents itself in your life. And so in his Sunday school class, they all carried around coins, because the guy was a military guy, and when they were trying to teach the whole point about accountability, and in the military, if you know anything about that, you should Google it too. It's a whole other story. But it's for accountability, that you carry around the last coin, that you did something of significant honor and everything that you carried around. It's a reminder, and it's also accountability. So if they would see each other at Walmart or something and somebody didn't have their coin on them, they'd have to buy the other family coffee or something, because you always need to be equipped to you never know what's going to happen. So guess what? Ben's at work. He gets the call. Your house is on fire. It's burning down. You're losing everything. He goes, he looks at his house. It's on fire. He's losing everything. His wife's in tears, buckled to her knees. And guess what? His brothers and sisters in Christ come and coin check him in the front yard as the house is burning behind him, and they all pray over this coin. He has 5 holes bored in it. Well, I have 5 holes for 5 years of sobriety. At that time, I only had 2, so I only had 2 holes in it. He says, Jenny, your challenge is really not in here in prison, even though it may feel like it. When you get out, you're going to be presented with challenges that will tempt you. People will try to sway you. People will try to pull you away from truth in your life, and you have got to be ready, because you never know what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen, and if you're not prepared and equipped spiritually to handle these grave evils that will present themselves to you, you will collapse and you will fall, and you will find yourself in the very same way again. And that scared me to death. This is Evelyn, my sister. This is her husband, Ben. God blessed her with a house 3 times the size she was in. This is her daughter, 18-month-old Sophie, when now she's growing up. And they blessed her with a new son, Isaac. Evelyn shares her testimony during the summers with me now. She's a teacher still, so of course she can't do it during the school year. I would have loved to bring her, because that's really interesting to see the 2 aspects of having to offer forgiveness and having to surrender and be forgiven. Fast forward. But the Lord began to restore everything in my life. I trusted Him, even though it looked bleak. No one spoke to me. Like I said, a few years went by and there was no conversation. But as soon as I got out, all of a sudden, who's in charge of changing hearts? Jesus Christ. That's my King. I have to trust Him that He will not go against His own word, because He cannot go against His own word. And He promises good, a future, and a plans of hope. Relationships. These are my 2 boys. I have one in black and white and one in color. You know why I do that? Because this one in black and white, Dad is not restored. I've seen my 11-year-old son one time in 5 years on an accident and got this picture. He's not ready. But the Lord has blessed me with an opportunity to witness to my oldest son, who does not yet know Jesus, but Lord God, I'm a praying mama, and he is going to get Jesus. So with all that being said, even though the outcome doesn't look exactly perfect like you think it does at the time, the Lord's working for you. My cup is full. Fast forward. He gave me a new mission in life. Fast forward. That new mission was to write a novel for those people who suffer with PTS and substance abuse and don't know how to overcome it and don't know how to get out of that hole, how to overcome and to teach unity. And that right there is a parenting magazine. Prison to Parenting. Where do they do that at, right? Okay, that's for. And this is just some of the life. Offer, prove, and share the truth. How do you do that? How can you share Jesus Christ with somebody and not say the word Jesus? You change your life. And when they come and ask you, you say, Jesus Christ changed my life. That's how you do that. And these are just different places. Those are veterans speaking. That's my husband and I right here, Caleb, at a marriage conference, signing books, loving on veterans. You can fast forward again. There's my sister over there. I went to Fort Leavenworth. You know, they're trying to take a lot of God out of the military. That man right there fought very hard to have me come to Fort Leavenworth and be the very first faith-based approach to substance abuse speaker that they've ever had, that they've ever gotten credit for attending. And so out of that, a new project was born, the Spencer Project. It's my own ministry. I give away free ebooks to chaplains in the military on any branches, on any level in the VA, in order for them to help minister to these people so they'll understand a little bit about what they don't. And then guess what? God said, you know what? I think these two serve better together than apart. So I'm going to bring them together. And there we are. And I applied for pardon. Average wait, 3 to 5 years in the state of Alabama. I applied less than 60 days ago. I've already got my civil liberties back. And I am ready to go in front of the board as soon as I get a date to where I can petition for full rights, to get my full pardon from the governor of Alabama. And Jesus willing, I will get that full pardon. And ultimately, Matthew 9:22, my faith has made me well. It wasn't the state. It wasn't anybody else. It was Jesus Christ and Jesus Christ only. I highly encourage you to seek Him out, seek His face, seek Him in everything. I'm going to ask my husband to come up and close with a prayer. But thank you for listening. Thank you for my testimony. Heed my words because I know what I'm talking about. You know, I had the philosophies of the world and they don't work. So...